We are about to start Siman Chafei in Iggeres HaKodesh. What makes Siman Chafei in Iggeres HaKodesh unique? All the other chapters in Iggeres HaKodesh are either letters to different communities, Chassidic communities. Some of them, as we've seen, are not letters, but just writings of the Alter Rebbe, essays on Chassidus that the Alter Rebbe wrote. This letter is a letter to a community, the community of Vilna. And actually this letter, although it doesn't say it specifically, is addressed not to the Chassidim of Vilna, but to the Misnagdim of Vilna. Okay? So if anyone over here considers themselves to be a Misnagid, by any chance, so this is a good letter. This is a letter addressed to you.
There's no Chassidim,
what is
no Misnagdim. That's why
the Archsidim. There are no Misnagdim with the Archsidim.
No?
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that.
There's you.
The Machlokes of it.
Ruvain, there's you. You're a Chassid. So
I'm a chassid for everybody.
What's the background of this letter? So you know the Baal Shem Tov passed away in the year 1760. Shuas, first day Shuas, 1760. Tav Kuf Chaf. And the Baal Shem Tov himself did not write anything. We have nothing in writing from the Baal Shem Tov. There are a few letters that we have that he wrote, but in terms of being mechaber Svarim, in terms of Svarim, there's nothing from the Baal Shem Tov. Everything we have from the Baal Shem Tov was transcribed by other people, by his students. Shivchi Abesh, the stories, but I'm talking about even the Torah. So you have, for example, you have Teilus Yaakov Yosef, and you have Peiros Yosef, and you have sorry, Baal Shem Tov Ala Torah. You have Keser Shem Tov, and then the Sefer, which is going to be at the center of this letter, is a Sefer that was first printed in the year 1793. So again, 1793. Baal Shem Tov passes away in the year 1760, so this is some 30 years.
1770s,
sorry?
1770, I think.
Baal Shem Tov passed away in 1760.
Oh.
So this is some 30 years, a little more than 30 years after he passes away. There's a Sefer that's printed that's called Savos HaRivash.
Who's Yosef was a Misnagid at first. He converted.
That is correct. Converted, right. Mikvah and everything.
Well, I held the letter from the Baal Shem Tov, and I think it was 1742 that he wrote it.
Possible. So, this Savos HaRivash, which, by the way, I wanted to bring it over here, and it's not a rare thing. Maybe you can buy it right in the store. It's Savos HaRivash. Recently, they came out also with a new, beautiful edition of it, and I had it with me around a minute before I left my house, and then I forgot it. And then I looked for it over here. I looked all over. I couldn't find it. But it's a sefer. It's a thin sefer. Actually, in the original, it's a thin sefer. Today, ready with the newer version. It's already a bigger sefer called Savos HaRivash. And once again, Savos HaRivash was not written by the Baal Shem Tov. It's someone who collected various teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, the word Sava literally means a will. Last will and testament. And this sefer first appeared again in the year 1793. Well, sefer arrives in the city of Vilna. I'm sure the Chassidim must have been very excited, but the Misnagdim were even more excited. They all went and they bought it, and they read it, and they criticized it, and they put it in a cherem which the Gra himself signed upon, and immediately they embarked upon public book burnings of the Sefer Savos HaRivash because of the heresy, Kaviyachol, that was found inside the Sefer.
What's Rivash again?
Rivash is Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem.
Oh, Baal Shem. I
Right.
And what was their number one allegation?
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. So, the Alter Rebbe actually, he speaks about this in some of his letters. In one of the letters he talks about, he compares this. We know that the Rambam also says the Baal Shem Tov is in good company.
And
he says the Rambam
wrote
I forgot the name of the person who collected it.
Oh.
He says that the Baal Shem Tov is in good company. We know the Rambam also, his works were burnt, and he said
the Talmud was burnt.
The Talmud was burnt by Goyim, not by Yidden.
Although they say that one was because they burned the Rambam, the Talmud got burned.
Right, I'll talk about that in a second. So, the Alter Rebbe writes that why is it that people burnt the Rambam? Because they didn't know the Rambam. So the people who were near the Rambam, the people who knew the Rambam, they realized the greatness of the Rambam. As we know that in times of the Rambam, the people in the communities of the Rambam, when they said Kaddish, they would say B'chayechen, U'giyemechen, U'chaye D'chol Beis Yisrael, U'chaye Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon. That's how great he was. That they added his name into the Kaddish. The Mashiach should come in the lifetime of Chaye, in your life.
That was in Teiman that they did
Doesn't take but the bottom line is, in places they didn't know their Rambam, so they weren't familiar with his holiness, with his greatness, they burnt the stuff. And that's something which is a normal thing, that when someone is a great revolutionary, and when someone brings a completely new oil into the world, so it encounters resistance, which is just a lesson for us in life also. If no one is fighting you, you're not doing anything revolutionarily good. Not that that's a word.
They were grateful because the Rambam wrote that Iggeres with Taiman,
Yeah, there were different tinies that people had. In the Rambam there was that they tinied some people tinied that he didn't that he denied Chias Mason. Yeah. Actually, he wrote a whole letter to defend that called Iggeres Chias Mason. Whole letter. The bottom line is, as you mentioned, right, that 100 years later, in Paris, in the Notre Dame, they burned 12 wagon loads of the Gemara, and we have to realize that what kind of load that was. Not like today when this is before the printing press.
That's
And
why the Notre Dame Cathedral burned down.
Yeah.
Because of that.
And every set of Shas was I don't know if you want to say priceless, but it was monumental value.
Handwritten.
Yeah. Handwritten. And they said that was because it's a punishment for having burned the Rambam. There's a Goyish statement that says where they burn books, eventually they burn people.
And they did that too.
Yeah. So the Alter Rebbe says it's fine. The day will come, and everyone will embrace the Baal Shem Tov. And sure enough, today in today's day and age, I don't know if there's any Fruma Yid out there who denies the greatness and the holiness of the Baal Shem Tov and what he's accomplished. But this was a difficult time for Chassidim and for Chassidus. And this is a letter where the Alter Rebbe is writing specifically to the Misnagdim in Vilna, defending the Tzava Sarivash. Now, and let's start straight inside. Chafei. Page Kuf Lamed Ches, opposite of page 274. Lahavin Imre Bina, to understand the words of wisdom, Mashakasav Besefer Hanikra Tzavos Rivash, that which is written in the Sefer which is called Tzavos Rivash. And the Alter Rebbe says, before we get there, I need to make some sort of disclaimer over here. Hagam Shebe Emes, the truth is Eino Tzavos Klal. This wasn't his will. This is not something which he said before he passed away. The person who compiled and collected it, so he claims that he was present at the passing of the Baal Shem Tov. Maybe he's right, and therefore he felt that he was right. He was justified in calling the Sefer Tzavos Sarivash the will, because he was by the passing of the Baal Shem Tov. But the Alter Rebbe says he wasn't. This not his will. Rakim Lokute Imireisa Vatoheres. All it is a collection taka of the pure sayings, Shaliktu, which they gathered and compiled. Lokute Basar Lokute, they gathered and they gathered some more. But V'layadu Lekaven Halashna Maskunta, many times they didn't know exactly how to. They didn't actually get the exact intent and write it down 100% properly. But the intent of everything, the gist of everything is 100% correct. I'll never say everything there is correct, but the wording sometimes might be a little off, because again, it's not that the Baal Shem Tov wrote it. The Baal Shem Tov didn't write it.
Could be third time, fourth time over.
And as the Alter Rebbe will say later on, also, it's not only that. The Baal Shem Tov, he spoke in Yiddish, and the Sefer was written in Lashon HaKodesh. So also it had to have been translated, and sometimes the translator might have used the wrong word also. And we'll see, Taka, that one of the big sticking points the Alter Rebbe is going to point out how one of the words of the Baal Shem Tov was mistranslated, which was a big part of the issue over here. But the Alter Rebbe is making a big deal out of the fact that it's not his will. Why is that? Because when someone writes a will, and you know that this will is going to be read generations down the line, you're very careful, because you need to make sure that every single word is exact and precise, and it's not going to be misunderstood, because you're not going to be around to correct it and to clarify. So if this were taka to be the Baal Shem Tov's will, which he wrote, then every word is he right says he's not. No, this is not his will. Not only he didn't write it, it's not his will, and even though everything in there is correct, but you have to be careful with the wording, not to be medayik in every single word. He didn't write it. I said last week about the Shemar Hashem Eskoleyevav. No. I saw this in a letter from the Rebbe. The Rebbe is there talking about the importance of context and seeing everything within context. It's not too often that the Rebbe is writing humor. The Rebbe says, imagine you have a person, one person comes a little late to shul, another person leaves shul a little early. The person who comes a little late hears someone, the person who leaves a little early hears a person saying, Shomer Hashem es kol oyavav ve'eis kol harashoyim. And then he leaves before the last word. So Shomer Hashem es kol oyavav ve'eis kol harashoyim. Hashem guards all those he loves and their shayim. And then there's a person who came a little late, so he missed the first word, and he hears es kol oyavav es kol harashoyim yashmid. That all those who he loves and all his enemies Hashem destroys. And what's the point? That if you miss the beginning, you miss the end, you miss the context. So avart. What is MS? When is something MS? MS, Rosh Hashanah, is Aleph is the first letter in the Aleph base, and Taf is the last, and Mem is the middle one. Sheker, on the other hand, are three letters that are consecutive. So what does that mean? When you pull anything out, when you have only a limited picture, you don't see the beginning, you don't see that, you're just pulling out a small little, you excerpt something, that's Sheker. MS is when you see the entirety, the whole picture. So when the Baal Shem Tov is talking, you need context. The Baal Shem Tov, first of all, he's talking to his students, and he assumes that they have certain already information, a certain knowledge that they have already, and therefore he feels free as to say something with understanding. And it's possible a person who's taking a writing down, but you're missing the context, and it's possible it could be misleading because you don't have the whole picture. That's basically the Alter Rebbe saying that yes, every single thing in there is correct, but you have to be careful, and sometimes you need a little explanation, a little context, and also you have to remember the wording isn't always precise. That's the way the Alter Rebbe begins. Now, before we get to the actual, what the Alter Rebbe is going to say, what I would like to do is actually read from you that passage from the Savas Harivash, which made the Misnagdim go ballistic. Here it is. Like I said, I asked my wife to send me a picture of the page. So here we are. Okay. So the Baal Shem Tov, this is what it says. Baal Shem Tov says, Im shemea echad medaber, v'hu mispalel. Imagine that you're davening and you hear that someone is speaking, disturbing you. Right? Ever happened?
Oh yeah.
Ever happened to you that someone's disturbing? When
I daven, yes.
So that's what he's saying. He's saying, if you're davening and someone's disturbing, so what should you do?
So you're agreeing with me now.
Well, see. So what? So what should you do? So I'll give you a little spoiler alert. This might come as a shock to someone. The advice of the Baal Shem Tov is not to get angry. That's not his advice. Get angry. What is his advice? Yeimar, the person you should say that you who are davening, you should say it like this: Lama hivi Hashem haleim ladaber b'teich tefilasi. Why did Hashem cause that this person should speak while I'm davening? Why is Hashem causing me to be disturbed in davening? After all, we believe in Hashgacha Pratis, that if someone is speaking during davening, it's Hashgacha Pratis. So must be Hadibur hu Hashchina. Dibur represents the Shechina. This is something which we learned about in the past, and we'll revisit it later on. That the Shechina is Dibur, is Hashem's Dibur. V'sharsa Hashchina b'fiv shel zeh ha'adam. It is the Shechina that right now is being shoyda, is residing in the mouth of this person who's disturbing me. Kedei shachazek es atzmi al avodah. The purpose is that I should daven with even more concentration. So kama yeshli lechazek es atzmi. How much do I have to now strengthen myself? Ba'avodah. He tefillah in serving in my service of Hashem in my davening, ubefrat, and especially if the person who's speaking and disturbing me is a goy or a little kid, so then it turns out kaviyachol hashchina ba'adam kazeh. Think about it. The Shechina is right now in this goy. The Shechina is right now in this kid. Kama roi le'lasas b'Jesus. So how much more so I need to daven with even more Jesus and even more strength. This is what the Baal Shem Tov says. And on this, the Misnagdim, as they say in Yiddish, they had kniptions.
What kniptions?
They had kniptions. You ever heard that expression?
The guy talking is a mikshol for for the person davening, and the person has to be mechazik himself. So, but I could see at first glance the opposition that.
What's the opposition?
That you're promoting that the guy talking serves a positive purpose. That one man's mitzvah is
That wasn't
another.
the problem. It wasn't the problem.
People go crazy nowadays about cell phones going off in the middle of davening.
Okay.
So
I don't know.
it's a shechina. Maybe the cell phone's now a shechina.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
Maybe.
But I'm making. We're talking it out. It's not.
So what is the problem? The problem is you're saying that the shechina is an agoy. Shechina is an agoy. That's kfira. Apikursis. Burn the books. That's what happened. In fact, when Alter Rebbe was put into prison a few years later, and one of the Misnagdim wrote lengthy letters to the government denouncing the Alter Rebbe, and one of the things they claimed was heresy, and they quoted this Kesher Shem Tov as part of their Tzava Sarivash. Now we have to understand, and this is something I spoke about a little before class, which is that this is really part of a larger polemic, larger machlokes over here. Actually, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but a few weeks ago, this machlokes burst into full gear. Yeah, the flames were were fanned. But that was that. There was a rabbi who said on a video a few weeks ago, and it went viral. I don't know if anyone saw it. Who said that the song "Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere" is incorrect, and we can't say it. Sorry.
You say Hashem.
You could say Hashem is in the shul. You could say Hashem is in the Beis Hamikdash.
Wait, didn't the Sfas Emes say that he's wherever you find him? I mean, that's the Sfas Emes.
The Kutzker. The Kutzker. We have to understand what that means. The Kutzker was not saying this. He's not saying that at all. And why is that? Because what do you mean? The Eibishter is in a Makom Tumah. And this was a big deal by the Misnagdim, and they felt, and this is something in Kabbalistic words, this is called Tzimtzum Kipshutai, which they felt that when Hashem created the world, He literally contracted Himself to the point that He's not in places that are unholy. Hashem isn't present, and not only isn't He present there, but it's actually completely and totally disgraceful and disrespectful to say that Hashem is in the bathroom.
Well, who created the bathroom?
Didn't the Kutzker say that Hashem is wherever you let Him in?
So he brought that down. Okay, that's not that. The Kutzker didn't mean that. That means that means that where is Hashem revealed? Where I let Him in. But not the Kutzker wasn't saying the Kutzker was a chassid. He was not saying Tzimtzum Kipshutai. Trust me on this. He was not saying Tzimtzum Kipshutai.
And
I'm not mistrusting you. I'm just asking. I'm trying to understand
he's
what
saying,
you're saying.
He's saying.
He did a good job of not disturbing today.
Hashem is not supposed to be in an unclean place.
He's saying.
Keep it up.
He's saying a vart. He's saying a vart and avodah. The Kutzker is saying, at the end of the day, Hashem is everywhere. But what's most relevant to me? But what's most relevant to me is where am I letting Him in? In other words, there's the way it is in truth, the way Hashem is everywhere, and then there is the way it is. Where can I relate to Hashem? Where do I find Hashem? Where I let Him in? That's a different idea. So this is something which is a big deal. Now,
and there's Zohars on both sides of there are Chazals, I guess, on both sides of the coin. The Misnagid part and the Hasidic approach. I assume that there are ancient.
Well, you don't have to go to Mori Chazal. You have Malay Chalaretz Kaveda, right? That's a Shemaim Vesaretz Ani Malay. But there are different ways of understanding it. The bottom line is, this rabbi, I'm sure he's a wonderful person, a great person, but somehow he missed the memo. Someone forgot to tell him that although Taka, this is what the Gra held, and that is correct, but as is the case with almost every other area in Chassidus, the whole world has come around to see things from the Chassidic perspective. Everything which the Misnagdim were screaming at the Chassidim about 200 years ago, today's Misnagid agrees with the Chassidim. In other words, the Baal Shem Tov's derech in everywhere, whether it's in Simcha, whether it's about Avodas HaTfilah, whether it's in the area of Eshkacha Pratis, they become universally embraced. So today, some people wear shtreimels, some people don't wear shtreimels. Some people learn Chassidus, some people don't learn Chassidus. But the basic, fundamental ideas of Chassidus have become universally accepted, including the idea of Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai, the idea that Hashem is everywhere. And this person is still, he's learning the Nefesh HaChaim and didn't, again, someone has to tap him on the shoulder and tell him, in Kol HaKavod, that we're beyond that. We're beyond the era of Machlekes. Now, But this was, again, this machlekes was alive and well back then, and the notion that the Shechina should be in a goy, and not only the Shechina is in a goy.
And where's the nafkamina? Where does it? Since halacha makes all the difference in the world, where would this machlokas express itself in practical halacha?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's an answer to that.
Because otherwise, is it just to have a whole machlok?
Let me ask you a question. You ever learned the Sefer Ikrim?
No.
No. Do you know anything about the Sefer is about?
The Ikrim, but I've never learned
the
it.
Three.
That he takes issue with the Rambam. Is it 13 Ikrim or is it not 13 Ikrim? What's the nafkamina halacha?
Well, in terms of Amunah, you have to know what to believe.
So, how's this different?
He says there's 3 ikrim.
Okay, my point is, what's the nafkamina halacha? Whether it's 3 or 13. And by the way, they all believe the same thing. The question, it's a question of numbering.
Yeah.
This is the derech of...
deal with this issue we're talking about tonight.
The point is that it's the derech of Yidden and Limud Torah is that we have arguments and there's machlokes and difference of opinion, and it's not always a nafkamina halacha. And maybe there is, but not necessarily so. Okay. So that is again, that's the passage which the Mishnagim took issue with. And now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put that aside, and the Alter Rebbe is we're going to have a few pages now. The Alter Rebbe is going to go off an entirely different area, although we might see connections. And at the end of the letter, the Alter Rebbe is going to come back, and based on the fundamental ideas and premises that the Alter Rebbe over here is going to give us and lay down, we're going to come back eventually and explain that Tzavot Sarivash and realize, and the Alter Rebbe is going to prove that according to the Kabbalah, it's 100% correct. Now you have to realize that in Misnagim then they didn't Chas v'Shalom deny Kabbalah. The Gra himself was a very great Mekubal. The Gra himself encouraged even the study of Kabbalah. So Alter Rebbe is not going to prove from Gemara that it's correct, but he will prove it from the Kisvei Arizal. But in order to do that, we need to first give a whole Akdam over here. Okay. And by the way, interestingly also, the Alter Rebbe does not spell it out. The Alter Rebbe does not start the letter. Hey, you guys, you have this and this taina. I'm going to respond to it. He doesn't. He's going to answer it as it goes along, and based on that, explain this passage of the Tzavot Sarivash. He doesn't directly say it doesn't directly say, well, your argument is, or your issue is X, Y, Z. I'm going to respond to it. He never says directly what their issue is, but it's very clear what he's addressing over here. Why doesn't Alter Rebbe say directly what he's addressing? Either he's being somewhat subtle, or maybe I've seen it suggested that Alter Rebbe couldn't bring himself to write something against the teachings of Baal Shem Tov, even if it's just presenting and saying this is your issue. He couldn't do that. Okay, let's do this inside. Who behektim my merazal, page 276, 2 lines from the top. Who all of in order to understand this behektim, we have to first introduce and preface it with the statement of Chazal brought down in the Rambam. The kol hakoyes ki ilu oived avodah zara v'chum. Getting angry is tantamount to avodah zara. Now, one way of looking at it is saying avodah zara is very bad. If you get angry, it's also very bad. So therefore, it's like avodah zara. On a scale from 1 to 10, and one being good and 10 being bad, avodah zara is a 10, and anger is a 10. So it's just a quantitative. This equals that. But that's not the case. When Chazal tell us that one thing is like another thing, it's not just saying, well, this is bad and that's bad. It means that there's also a substantive connection between the two, which is why when you're getting angry, essentially, it is avodah zara. It's really coming from the same place. There are many examples. Chazal do this many times. They'll say this is like a lashon hara is like avodah zara gilirayis v'chazdamim. What does that mean? That means a lashon hara contains within it the elements of avodah zara gilirayis and shvichazdamim. Another example, Rabbi say that hamalben fnei chaveri berabim, that someone who embarrassing someone, it's like killing.
What?
What? Shvichazdamim. Why? What's the connection? How's this that?
It turns red.
Yeah, so that's a physical thing, but let's talk more substantively. But if you think into it, when person A, Rahman al-Islam, goes and murders person B, where does that come from? What is it Why is it that most people don't murder other people? What's missing? What's that? What's the value that's missing in that person that allows them to kill someone else?
You think someone else has no value?
It's essentially you're demeaning and devaluing your fellow human being to the point that his life is meaningless to you. That's what killing, again, the act of killing is a result. It's a result of something going on inside. Yeah, to put it in some different words, you're not a murderer because you murder. You murder because you're a murderer. You understand what I'm saying?
Because of you. Because of the murder.
I can't kill someone. I can't kill someone. I'm assuming that most people on the table over here can't kill someone, right? Because you're not a murderer. Not you're not a murderer because you never killed someone. Because you're not a murderer. Because you're not a murderer, you can't kill someone.
Goes against your mitos.
Yeah. Someone who murders someone, it's because they are a murderer. What does it mean to be a murderer? They have no value for human life.
Well, what about...
Sheldon, you follow what I'm saying? Makes sense?
But I don't.
Oh, you don't agree?
No.
Usually I could tell by your body language that you didn't agree. I saw a smile. I thought you did agree this time.
No, because if you're in a situation and you're defending yourself,
I'm not talking. That's not murder. That's not murder. That's not murder.
That's self-defense.
It's not murder.
Premeditated murder, he's doing.
Yeah.
if you're in war,
Leisirzach is not. I didn't say kill. Murder. Leisirzach doesn't mean don't kill. It means you can't murder.
Right. When you go out and you stab somebody,
So-
stabbing them.
So again, what is being a murderer? Being a murderer means that you have no regard for the life of a fellow human being, which is why, Rahman al-Islam, if someone is a murderer, they can actually go and kill someone. And how about Malbin Pnei Chaveri B'Ram? How about shaming your fellow? Where does that come from?
Again, you have no...
Same place. It's the same thing.
Shirish.
The same place. If you valued the humanity
You wouldn't embarrass
of your fellow, you wouldn't embarrass him. So when Chazal tell us that Malbin Pnei Chaveri B'Ram, that someone who goes and embarrasses their fellow, it's shvichas damim. It's because what's Chazal saying? It's the same thing. Now, obviously, it's not the same thing because by one of them you have a levaya, and the other one you don't have a levaya, and you can ask mechila. So it's not. We're not saying it's the same thing literally that it's tantamount, but we're saying benefesh inside the person. It's coming from the same place. Taste.
So I'm the only murderer in this table?
You're saying what? In the battles.
In
the Israeli army.
You. Yeah, so...
That's a mitzvah. That's not a murder. That's habala hargacha hashkim v'hargit chila.
That's solus nefashos
Yeah.
for a cloud.
More of that should happen. A lot more of that should happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You weren't doing it because you felt like going over there and saying, I hate this man, let me kill him.
I was in Hebron just now, and the tour guide. So we passed by a cemetery, Arab cemetery.
Where?
So, in Hebron. I was there a few weeks ago. So the Arab,
Few weeks ago.
So our tour guide says, "What do you say when you see a cemetery like this?" What are you supposed to say?
Kain Yerbu.
Pru revu milu sa'aretz. He says. Anyways, but Al Kapanim. So the same thing over here. When we're saying Kol HaKodesh Kilo Eved Avodah Zarah. So what it means is Chazal is telling us something deep. That essentially anger and Avodah Zarah come from the same place. And in a subtle way, getting angry is Avodah Zarah. Why is that? Let's do inside. The reason for this is understood to those who understand wisdom. Because at the moment when you get angry, essentially what's happening is you're losing your emunah. Because if you were to believe that whatever happened is from Hashem, you would never be angry. Where does anger come from? Anger comes from
Inside of you.
Anger comes from the place where you think something is wrong, it shouldn't have happened. It's unjust. You feel a sense of righteous indignation. But 1 second. Who runs the world?
Hashem.
Hashem runs the world.
What about if you're angry about evil, which Hashem also opposes?
Be a little more...
You're angry
For the Kavod Hashem.
for Kavod Shemayim, yeah. Just as Reuven said. You're angry that there is Chilo Hashem going on.
It's a mitzvah. It's a different thing. It's a mitzvah.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little later.
All right.
But here we're talking about something happened to you, and you're angry with it. We're not talking about when, the Kani Kinesi for
Yes.
Hashem. We're not, that we'll talk about maybe later. The Naftali actually talks about on page 280. We'll get there. But here we're talking about Pasha, you're angry because something happened to you. Now, what is Avodah Zarah? You go to a person. What's Avodah Zarah? So we have our childish. Some of us still have our childish conceptions of what Avodah Zarah is. We're like, yeah, today we're so smart. But back 2,000 years ago, when everyone was a bunch of Neanderthals and idiots, right?
Primitive.
So what did they do? You had a bunch of primitive cavemen. So what did they do? They had little statues of made out of gold and silver and wood. And they would bow to them and say, you created me, right? Because they're idiots, obviously. We wouldn't do it because we're not idiots. And it's one of the foundations in general of Western thinking is that today we are the smartest ever. And back in the day, everyone was idiots. But one of the things also, as I mentioned, I was in Israel a few weeks ago. One of the interesting things is they show you, and you look at the different buildings and the construction, the way they were building 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, and some of the stuff, even today, they have no idea how they did it. And it's so sophisticated and so incredible, takes such incredible wisdom and how they were able to move things from one place to another and put it.
The stones are heavy.
Yeah, like one stone there was
Several tons.
6,000 tons or something. It's
And
not
you lift it
normal.
up,
Yeah.
the praise.
And not only to lift it up, it lifted up and it's set in the wall exactly 1 millimeter off the stone beneath it. It's like these were very, very smart people, very, very smart people. And ultimately, what is Avodah Zarah? Avodah Zarah is not, I don't believe in the Eibishter. That's called being a kofer beikar. That's not Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is I believe in the Eibishter. I believe in a supreme being. However, I believe that the Eibishter also
He's a messenger.
he has delegated. There are other powers there also. Hashem is the big CEO in the company, but just like every company has a big CEO, there are many other smaller managers. And by the way, okay, if I'm a janitor, I'm actually the head janitor is more relevant to me than the CEO. Think about it for a second. If I'm a janitor in Amazon, right? I care about Jeff Bezos. I care about the guy who owns Amazon. Yeah, he is the big boss. Yes, absolutely. But to me, I need to make sure that I make happy who?
My boss.
The one who's in charge of my shift, and the one that if I want to take a day off, that he's the one who can give me that permission. He's the one I gotta make sure that when it comes to holidays, I give him the gift, not Bezos. And that's what they're saying also. Back in the day, yeah, of course there's the Eibishter. But then there's the Malachim, and there's the Mazalas, and there's the forces of nature. And we have to make them happy. And this little statue I have represents a Malach or one of these forces of nature, which I have to curry favor from. Good. The essence of Avodah Zarah, as it turns out, is the idea that there is something other than Hashem that has any control whatsoever, any authority whatsoever. That is Avodah Zarah.
Can you repeat, please?
The essence of Avodah Zarah
As an entity,
is the belief, the mistaken belief that there is something other than Hashem that has any control or authority whatsoever. Avraham Avinu came along and he destroyed all the Avodah Zarah. He says, no, Ein Ed Movade. There's one Eibishter, and this Eibishter is busy. He runs and controls everything, and every single force and every single power that he created is Iggeres and Biat HaChodesh. Is like a axe in the hands of the wood chopper. And there's no davening to anything. There's no bringing karbanos to anything. There's Eibishter. Because the Eibishter micromanages and controls everything. If the Eibishter manages everything, then everything that happens to me is from the Eibishter. And if it's the Eibishter, is doch good, then it's good. Because the Eibishter is good.
what do you consider Malachim?
And they wish to Malachim HaKodesh and Biad HaChetzach. Absolutely.
They control certain things.
They control nothing.
They don't control.
They control nothing.
They control. I don't know.
Again, they are like the axe in the hands of the wood chopper.
They're messengers.
Now, when a person
They have no bechira whatsoever. No bechira. to daven to a malach and say, Malach, please do me a favor, is avodah zarah. Why is it? Not because Hashem is jealous. Oh, I want you to come to me and say, because the malach is nothing. The malach has no autonomy whatsoever to do anything. There's, it says in next week's parsha, right? So Yaakov fights with the malach, right? And then Yaakov asks, he says, "What's your name?" And the malach responds, "Lama zati shalosh mi." Why are you asking? So if you look in the Ramban, what does the Ramban say over there? He says, "What are you asking my name for? It's going to help you anything? If you know my name, well, you think you'll call up me one day and say you're going to want a favor from me? I can't do anything for you. If you have a question, if you have something you need, go to the Eibishter. My name is meaningless." This is a big idea. In fact, there's certain piyutim. What? There's a malach, right?
You're gonna go talk to the social.
At the end of the day, you think maybe he has some sort of power, some sort of connections. He has nothing. He says, "I have nothing. I can't do anything." There's certain piyutim which seem to contradict this idea, and there's there are big discussions about this. There's we say Midas Harachim Aleinu is Galgali, right? Where's that in Slichas and in the Illa? Machnise, there's the piyut Machnise Rachim.
It's controversial.
These are controversial piyutim, right? And even those who say them, we have to touch what it means, but it can't mean a kipshute because you can't daven to malach.
No.
It's avodah zarah to daven to malach.
Sometimes when a person gets angry, they're just emotional. They're not thinking out about Hashem or about Hashgacha Pratis. They're just lashing out with emotion.
Okay.
And this Chazal is saying that even if they're not thinking about the cause and the primal cause, and they're just
you can have emotion from today till tomorrow. What that means at this moment, you lost your focus and you lost your amunah in Hashem Echad. Because if you at this moment had that amunah, you wouldn't be angry.
But
you're getting me upset now.
Hashem does not punish us for
but at the same time
something when we're
We're not talking about punishment.
When we're
I know I know what you're saying.
But not only in kas, but in pain. Somebody feels pain.
Right.
Yeah, and that's...
Rabbi, we're talking about the malachim. We know that en malach oseh shnei shluchiyot. When Hashem sends him to do something, he can do only this and that's it. We know for the 3 malachim came to Abraham Avinu. So you do the shlichut and that's it.
Yeah. There's actually even a big shaila. How can you go and ask for a tzaddik to daven for you on your behalf? We only allowed to daven to the Eibishter. It's a big. The Peil is done. It's Minig Yisrael, and it's always been Minig Yisrael back from the day. But at the end of the day, it's not something which is so pashat.
He's closer to Hashem. He protects you.
There's a famous truas Mariva about it, but the bottom line is there's idea of the Einoid Mavade, which is that it's only Eibishter. Good. So therefore, when a person gets angry, you're pashat at this moment. You're losing your amunah. You're losing your amunah. Because if it's from the Eibishter, it's good. Person who lives in that place and knows that the Eibishter, everything is from the Eibishter. The whole concept of anger is not something which is shaykh b'chol. Good. But what if the reason why you're angry is not because the Eibishter did something to you, but you're angry because someone else did something to you? What if someone else hurt you or offended you?
Apparently, it's still for everything.
And that person that has bechira chavshis, that's not from Hashem. That person absolutely, Hashem tells there's person A and person B, right? Let's say, right? You have Sason over here, right? And Hashem tells Sason, don't say something nasty about Rabbi Silberberg. It says the 30. Now let's say something nasty. So if he does it, you can't say that's what Hashem wanted. Hashem didn't want it.
Maybe it's in the Sayon.
It is in the same, but Hashem didn't want it. And if I'm hurt by that, why can't I be angry at you? But it's not from Hashem, it's from you.
Apparently
and Hashem didn't want you to do it. You know I know Hashem didn't want you to do it? Because it says in the Torah, don't do it. Hashem said don't do it. Why can't I get angry then? So that's a good question. But this is going to be a huge sugya. And I want to delay that till next week. And meanwhile...
Are you allowed to be angry or not allowed to be angry?
Not allowed to be angry. Mm-hmm. Not allowed to be angry. That's the spoiler alert. You're not allowed to be angry, but...
But Rabbi, we believe in Hashem 100%, but we're human beings. make you angry. It's normal.
You know what's interesting is that you say, but we're human beings. I don't know what that but is. In the world, when someone says, "Oh, I messed up," you know why? I'm a human being. I'm a human, only human, right?
Yeah.
In Yiddish, right, when you want to compliment someone, what do you say? This person, he's a mensch. What are you essentially saying? This person, he's a human.
Compared to an animal is all instinctive. He doesn't have a chiyuv.
In Yiddishkeit, a human being is strength. When you mess up, don't say, "Oh, I'm human." Say that was me, as you said. That was me losing the fight against the animalistic side within me. That was the animal in me, not the human. Humans don't mess up. Animals mess up. Animals follow impulse. You're saying we believe in Hashem, and because we're human, we have the ability to believe in Hashem and stick to it always. Life isn't easy. It's not meant to be easy. But because it's not easy, it's not an excuse.
So then, according to that, then it's you doing it and not Hashem. So
we should have a right.
It's a contradiction.
So we should have a right to be angry at someone who does something bad to us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
So isn't that a contradiction? I mean,
It is, yes. And unfortunately, you're gonna have to wait now for a week.
Don't be angry. Don't be angry.
Yeah, but don't. Yeah,
Don't be angry.
Yeah. I hope you don't get angry at that we have to wait for a
You
week.
can look ahead.
What I want to do is I want to conclude now, because it's a big idea. We're not going to finish in 10 minutes. The next idea, it's going to take us a lot more than that, so we'll start next week, but I'll conclude with a vart on the parsha, which is also connected to what we're talking about here. So know that the beginning of this week's parsha, it says, Vayifka b'mokem, Yaakov, right, he comes to the Darton, to the Har Moriah, and Vayolan Sham, and there he slept over there. So the question is, what do you mean Yolan Sham? Which is Vayifka b'mokem. He arrived at the place Vayolan, and he slept, obviously. He slept over there. What's Vayolan Sham? What's there? So the Medrash gives us two opinions. One opinion is that Sham, over there he slept. Oh, no, sorry. Vayishka b'mokem mahu. That's the. What's the b'mokem mahu? Should have said right. What in that place? B'mokem. There he slept. But the 14 years that Yaakov Avinu was by Shem Ve'ever, there he didn't sleep. Right. There he learned Torah. It doesn't mean he didn't sleep, but it means that he didn't vayishkav. He never lied down to bed. If he slept, he fell asleep on his on his arm. Now, there's another day in the Medrash. Another day it says that no. Or in addition, over there he slept. But the whole 20 years that he was by Lavan, he didn't sleep. He never slept in a bed. He never lied down for a good night's sleep. And the Medrash continues. This is a Medrash in Bereshit Rabbah. The Medrash continues and says, "Okay, so Maha Yo'ever, what was he saying when he was by the house of Lavan?" There's two opinions. One opinion is that he was saying the 15 Shir HaMalas, 15 Kapitlach of Shir HaMalas. So one of the psukim over there is Luli Hashem Shahoya Lano Yemar No Yisrael. This is what Yisrael says. Which Yisrael? This is talking about Yaakov Avinu. Another opinion is that he was he said the whole Tehillim. HaKodesh Yoshev Tehillas Yisrael. That this is Tehillas Yisrael. That's what the Medrash says. So the Rebbe speaks about this. And the Rebbe says, "What's the question, Mahu Yomer? Well, it's simple. It sounds like okay. So if he didn't sleep, then what was he doing?" But that can't be the question. What was he doing? Because we know what he was doing. Later on in this week's parsha, it says that Yaakov Avinu told Lavan, he screamed at him and said, for the last 20 years I did, what was I doing? Hayisi, by day and by night, and by day I was the heat, and by night, right? Right, that he worked with us, so that's what he was doing. So what does it mean? So what's the question, Mayu Emer? What's the question? What was he saying? So the Rebbe explains, Mayu Emer, it's a deeper question. Yaakov over here is going to Golos. He's leaving the house of Yitzchak and Rivka, leaving Eretz Yisrael, leaving a place of holiness, going to a place of depravity, Charan, which is known as Charein Af Shalmakim, right? And there's so many nisyonis over there, and he has to deal with Lavan, and he has to deal with was trying to. How does a Yid combat this? So we know Hakel kill Yaakov, right? That obviously the Yid, our weaponry is with our mouth. You mentioned before other weaponry, but b'chlalos, right? Yidden, what's our primary weaponry? Even when we have an army that's busy with the guns, but what's the primary? What brings about the netzachim? Is our koil. So that's what he was saying. What was he saying? And obviously also, because Yaakov Taka was working very, very hard, so we understand he wasn't saying he wasn't busy learning Gemara and Torah and the Ktsas because he was. So he was saying Tillim. However, one of the opinions is that it wasn't just he was saying Tillim, but specifically what was he saying? He was saying the 15 kapitelach of Shir Hamalos.
It said in Levan Garti v'Taryag mitzvot shama.
Correct.
It was the whole Taryag mitzvot.
Verstehe. We know he did the mitzvahs, but here we know what was he. So obviously, while he was watching the sheep and while he was doing what he was doing, either he was saying the entire Tillim or specifically zoned in on the Tetz of Shir Hamalos. What's the significance of the Shir Hamalos? So the Chidah says that the 15 Shir Hamalos correspond to the 15 years during which Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov lived together in this world. Because you know, Avraham was 100 when Yitzchak was born. Yitzchak was 60 when Yaakov was born. So that means that when Yaakov was born, Avraham was 160. Avraham passed away at the age of 175, which means that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov lived together in this world for 15 years. By the way, coming up to Yitas Kislev soon, and the Chabad, we say the same thing. That the Alter Rebbe was born in the year Tov Kuf Hey, the year 1745, and the Baal Shem Tov passed away in the year Tov Kuf Chav, in the year 1760. That means that the three forefathers of Chassidus Chabad, which would be the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid and the Alter Rebbe, they shared 15 years here in this world. But that's a tangent. That's on the side. So why is Yaakov Avinu saying these 15? Because Yaakov over here has to have all the koiches. He needs not only his own schus, he needs his father's schus, he needs the schus of his grandfather Avram. So by saying these 15 kapitlach, which represents Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov together, what he was doing was Beruchnius. What he was doing was he was using the strength of his own strength, the strength of his father Yitzchak, as it says, as the Pasuk says, right? Luli Elokei Avram upachad Yitzchak, right? Elokei Avram pachad Yitzchak koyuli. And that's what gave him the strength to be able to continue, which is also Bepashtos. Avram represents the idea of Chesed, Avas Hashem. Yitzchak represents the idea of Yira, Gvura, Yiras Hashem. Yaakov represents the idea of Rachmim. And in order to defeat the enemy, he needed all the koiches of Kedusha in order to defeat the enemy.
Rabbi, David HaMelech was 100 years before.
So Ruach HaKodesh, with Ruach HaKodesh. Yeah. So
some of the Tillim were written earlier also.
Already done, years after.
No, some of the Tillim were written earlier, like the Shir Show.
Tefillah l'Moshe, Yish Elokim, Livnei Korach.
Mizmor Shabbos. So.
Mizmor Shirley Shabbos. It's written by Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah, that was written by Adam Arisha, I think.
Yeah. The Gemara and Baba Basra says there's 10 authors to Tillim. Okay, but. But the Rebbe notes something interesting, which is, here's Yaakov, and he's in Haran. A very difficult situation. Very difficult Galus that he's in. And what's he preoccupied? With Shir Hamalos. What does Shir mean? He was singing. He's singing. Stays. He's away from his father, away from his mother, away from his Rebbe. In a foreign land. A father-in-law who's busy trying to swindle him at every moment. He's working like there's no tomorrow. And what's he doing? He's singing. He's happy. That's what he's doing. Shir Hamalos. And why is that? The Rebbe points the last pasuk of the first Shir Hamalos. Ani shalom v'chi adaber heima lamolchama. Yeah, heima lamolchama. You have all these things that are waging battle against me. Lavan's waging battle against me. Different elements of this world are the whole Golos is waging battle against me. The Yishenis. Vani Shalom. I'm good. Why am I good? Because I believe in the Eibishter. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. And I know that if the Eibishter put me in this situation, because everything's from the Eibishter, I know that why did the Eibishter put me here? Because kibimakli avarti yisayardin, that I came here with nothing, and what am I going to leave with? I'm going to leave with soyim, ubakar, gemalach, avodim, with a tremendous wealth, and not only a wealth begashmias, but more importantly, a wealth beruchnias. He came with nothing, and what did he leave with? Rachel, Leah, Bila, Zilpa, Shifti, Yudke, right? The situation is terrible, but it's the Eberster. And if the Eberster is giving me this challenge, I know that the reason is that it's for my good. And that's why, Heima la Mulchama, right? I'm not looking for Mulchamas, by the way. Heima la Mulchama. I'm never looking for Nishanas. No one's ever looking for Golos. But at the end of the day, when Heima la Mulchama is Ani Shalom, I'm good. Why? Because I believe in the Eberster. And this directly connects to what we're talking about over here in the Tanya. This idea over here about not getting upset, not getting angry. When you have a moon on the Eberster, you realize, regardless of what the circumstances, regardless of what's going on, you realize there's a kavana, the Eberster runs the world, and therefore you don't get angry. Instead, you realize it's from the Eberster, and from the Eberster, it's for the good, and it's meant for you to grow from it. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.
I'm going to next week.